and that's just taking stills?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay. We're all set. The oldest, show you an autograph poster for a re-release of Hollywood history in this room. It may not look like much, but we do have some great examples of things. Now, normally, living up here would be the only surviving E.T. He's not here. He's actually on tour because this is the 40th anniversary of the film, and he's basically being a nice photo op for us. Instead, we've got Fred Gwynne as Herman Munster. This is a casting of Fred Gwynne wearing his makeup, made by makeup artist Dick Smith. This is a prototype head from the creature from the Black Lagoon. You can see here it being worn here in this photograph. This was one of two finalists for the original creature from the Black Lagoon. This is what was known as the eel head, and this was now when they made the mold, or when they pulled it out of the mold, it was either too thick, too thin, too many air bubbles. There was, for whatever reason, the makeup artist decided that they didn't want it anymore, so they were going to throw it out, but it became part of Cortlandt Hall's collection. On November 3rd, 1962, the Saturday, Linda and Dick Smith have both signed it, Linda on one side, Dick Smith on the other. You'll pay close attention to her eyes. They look very unearthly, but they're designed after cougar eyes. So basically, so that they would have one, because there are dozens of them.
Yeah.
They were originally sculpted without a mouth, and on the day, Spielberg said, "Hey, you know what? These twice on screen." He played him a number of times on stage. I think nearly 1,000 times on stage, but he only played Dracula twice. He played a number of other vampires, and that's what this was for. Now, these life casts are used by the makeup department so they can build and test makeups without actually having to get the actor in the chair. We have here one of the original golden idols, again screen used from Raiders of the Lost Ark. This was the one used for wide shots, basically up until the point where he's making the switcheroo. Then they would put in. Are you going to take this? No. Okay, fantastic. Oh, you're throwing this away. Fantastic. We're going to take this. So, and he wound up giving them away to close friends and family, and it's a very unique, very unassuming, but very unique piece of Star Wars history. And if you're curious, we have these are various pieces of merchandise from. He's not ready yet. All right, he's at the tail end of the tour. I will be handing you off momentarily, but now if you want to take any more detailed pictures, now is the time. If you have any questions, I've got long-winded answers for you. Okay. Thank you very much for your patience.
Oh, how delicious. Hurry now, drink every drop. The blossom of youth is yours forever. With a plenty.
And we'll guide you through to see the classic monsters. Count Dracula, played by Bela Lugosi. Oddly enough, Bela was not the first chosen to play the part. It was going to be Lon Chaney Sr., because he was the man of 1,000 faces. However, Chaney died just a few months before production began. Bela had already been playing Dracula on the stage for almost 1,000 performances. Nevertheless, the studio was still concerned because he had this thick Hungarian accent. Little did they realize that's what really made Dracula come alive, was his Hungarian accent, because the Count was from Romania, or Transylvania. So, even...
Welcome. The spider spinning his web for the unwary fly. The blood is the light. There are far worse things waiting man.
Followed them to the masquerade ball in Paris and disguised himself inconspicuously as the Mask of the Red Death. No one's going to notice him in that outfit. And he eventually whisked Christine away to Germany, and the actor was Max Schreck, who played the part. Pandemic, and over in Europe it was brought by rats. And of course, in the film, Nosferatu bite all their COVID shots, so they're fine. Don't worry about it. Anyway, but see, if connected up with the rats, if you notice, you say at first, Boris's real name was William Henry Pratt, and the only reason he didn't use his real name was because his brothers were in Parliament, and they looked down upon an actor. So, which they changed their mind, of course, when he became world famous. Anyhow, but Boris really paid his dues. He did about 80 different films in the silent and early sound era, sometimes never even getting screen credit. But then when director James Whale picked him to play the Frankenstein monster, as they say, he was an overnight success, and that could say their uncle was a werewolf. So anyway, in the film, he was a botanist by the name of Wilfred Glendon. And he went to Tibet, and I'll let him explain it, because this is Henry's voice here.
We're looking for the Manatee lupino lumino, strange flower which grows only in Tibet, and which it is said takes its life from the moon.
That flower is the only known antidote for werewolfery.
For what?
So in the film, the son, and that's where you hear the voice, "Help me, help me." So now Vince's wife's bedside, when his automobile careened off a cliff, he was horribly disfigured. He had to recreate his voice through this device in his neck into the wheel and die. Well, the three good fairies turned it around, and she only 41, as I mentioned, 6 years after my uncle was the werewolf of London. And in the film, even a man who's pure in heart and says his prayers by night may become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms and the autumn moon is full and bright. And so this is the twin of the Wolfman that I made for Universal Florida, which was at the Monsters Cafe. Unfortunately, they just recently closed, and of course that was because the hilt of the cane was made of silver, so that that was the only thing that could kill everybody. And in the film, of course, he was madly in love with this beautiful gypsy girl called Esmeralda, married to the Bride of Frankenstein, Elsa Lanchester. And they actually appeared in Ardith Bay from the original Mummy, 1932. So this year marks the 90th anniversary of the Mummy, and in it, he was discovered in a sarcophagus much like this as a wrapped mummy called Imhotep. The young archaeologist that was guarding him at night, he unfortunately read off the scroll out loud, the scroll of Thoth and the scroll of life and death. A friend of mine was visiting Egypt at one point, and he told me they were for real, and so he sent them to me, and he says, if things get dull some night, you can brew up 9 of them and see if you can bring the old boy back to life, you know? So then over here we have Boris Karloff again. You may notice I do like Boris Karloff. This was from House of Frankenstein, and he played Dr. Niemann in this film, a rather unscrupulous doctor that was experimenting.
It's all that remains of a vampire, one of the world's undead. Dare I but remove this stake from where his heart once beat, and he would rise from the grave within which he lies, and turn into a bat, a vampire bat, feed hideously upon the living, whose veins pulsate with warm and vibrant blood. Ladies and gentlemen, the actual skeleton of Count Dracula, the vampire.
Well, we've decided not to take the tavern, the Lion's Head Inn, when he was going to try to bring himself back to visibility, because he didn't realize that one of the chemicals, monocaine, was about to drive him stark staring mad, and this is what he had to say.
The secret of invisibility lies there in my books. Suddenly I realized the power I held, the power to rule, to make the world grovel at my feet. Power to make multitudes run squealing in terror at the touch of my little invisible finger. Even the moon's frightened of me, frightened to death. The whole world's frightened to death.
Nothing bad about it.
The dark are a lost civilization of incredibly powerful creatures. Mutations, dwelling in the underground caves for centuries, able to see in total darkness. Their claw-like hands could easily tear a man to shreds in seconds. A mere human is no match for these beasts.
As was the sequel, Revenge of the Creature. There were two actors that played the creature, and oddly enough, neither ever got screen credit for it. It was Ben Chapman who did it on land. This is really Ben's costume. He was 6'3", and Rico Browning, who was like 5'10", 5'11", something like that, almost 3 minutes underwater. That's why he. And in the film, he was this very talented sculptor, Henry Jared, who created this beautiful wax museum of figures, but it wasn't appreciated by his partner because he didn't think they were making enough money. So he decided to set fire to the wax museum for the insurance money, and he trapped poor professional. He befriended this little girl, picked her up, and unknowingly, she plucked the medallion off of his chest, and the golem collapsed. Now, I've ruined the story for you, but I thought you should know the background.